Okay. So
I think we live over here. It goes live on my end.
Yep, it shows live.
Okay, we're live now. So thank you everyone for joining us. We will my text. Okay, so we have some subject, address. So thank you everyone for joining us. Good stand up, fight back, where we discuss strategy. YouTube. So please share with your friends, your family members, your neighbors, the MTA bus driver, and just let them know what we're doing here. If you like what we're doing, subscribe, turn on notifications, and don't miss an episode. I'm Margot Paez, scientist, engineer, and occasional journalist. And of course, you know my co-host, the amazing grassroots organizer, Carlos Marroquin. Today we have two very special guests. David Busch-Lilly. He is a member of the Echo Park Lake Unhoused community, who was arrested during the eviction, and Tudor Popescu, who's a volunteer organizer with a local chapter of Indivisible and a co-founder for an all-volunteer nonprofit called Grassroots Neighbors, which uses the mutual aid approach to supply support to housing and food insecure households in Los Angeles. It's on his last leg. If I accidentally bump the power supply and it falls out, my laptop will completely shut off. So if I disappear momentarily, have no fear, I'll come back on my work laptop. But it's just a warning. So, but thank you to all of you who joined us. To our guest, Carlos, hello. I want to try a new segment before we jump into this discussion, which is around what's going on with the unhoused community at Venice Beach in California, and with the surprise, surprise, sheriff's department going after the unhoused and criminalizing them. But before we get into that topic, I want to touch on a national thing, which is Biden. So I came up with some cards before my laptop died. So the segment is, now let me get this right. It's good Biden, bad Biden. So good Biden, bad Biden. Okay, so let me now, I'm going to share my screen here. And yeah, my laptop is so sad. Okay, so this is the good Biden. So, and I think it's still kind of meh Biden, because he has not, first of all, he has not canceled student loans for everybody, but they did do a few good things, which is that they did or are canceling some debt for defrauded borrowers. And they did this back at the end of March. And so these defrauded borrowers were people who got scammed by these for-profit colleges, and you know, they lost all the money. They were pushed to take huge amounts of debt to go to these BS schools, so that the schools could make a profit off of their loans. And then the schools, you know, they went bankrupt, and the students, they didn't get a diploma, they got nothing but huge amounts of debt. So the excuse me, so the administration has gone forward with reversing and forgiving the student loan debt for some of these people. Now, the thing is that this whole thing with the defrauded borrowers, this is not like a new thing. This is not something that the Biden administration just created. This is actually done under Obama, but under Trump, and Betsy DeVos, they somehow decided to revoke like most of the people's applications, which was so nice. And then also they're waiving now requirements for disabled borrowers who had borrowed for student loans. And apparently this was another problem where so many disabled borrowers were rejected because of some formalities in the applications. And I think it's totally ridiculous that they even have to fill out any forms to like prove that they're disabled and they deserve their loans to be forgiven. But thankfully, the Biden administration decided to revoke these forms, so they don't have to go through all these hoops to get it. So kind of a good Biden thing. But then now I want to go to the bad Biden, which is this nice thing that they did. So the Department of Homeland Security decided to sandblast a bunch of protesters at the Pipeline 3 in Minnesota. And why is this important? Well, there's a lot in the news recently about the Keystone XL pipeline being completely being dead, like it's over, it's never going to be built, as if, yeah, let's celebrate, yay, climate change. But here's another pipeline that's coming through the United States from Canada, and no word from the Biden administration on this. In fact, passively supporting DHA and immigration border patrol to go and harass the protesters who are doing exactly what they did with Keystone XL, which defend the indigenous land from these profit-hungry oil companies, and they sandblasted them. So that was great. So I don't know how all of you feel, but I kind of think that this week, if my computer will allow me, it's just suffering right now. I vote for today. All right. So thank you, everyone, for allowing me to do this short segment of Good Biden, Bad Biden. So now I think we're ready. Thank you. And when my laptop starts working again, this will go a little more smoother, I'm sure. But so thank you, David and Tudor. Thank you for joining us. Why don't I give you both a chance to introduce yourselves to our audience? I know we've had David on in the past, but Tudor, we have not. So you're definitely a new face on the show. I'm just going to drop you into the big screen here so the audience can see your beautiful face. And the floor is yours. So please share a little bit about who you are and your organizing work.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thanks for introducing me and having me on the show. Yeah, I might be a new face here on the show, but I've been definitely a face out there on the ground for a long time. In fact, I met Carlos during Occupy Wall Street days at Occupy LA, and we worked together in Occupy Fights for Closures, and I learned a lot from him, and a lot through the work that we did. It really opened my eyes about a lot of the injustice that's happening and that exists in our city right here. After the Occupy Wall Street and the foreclosure work started to be reduced, I continued to work with Occupy Venice, and we started a relief caravan, it was called. So we would go out with supplies and food to people in Venice, and try to help as best we could. So we've been doing that for I guess 10 years now. And then as time went by, the people, honestly, our comrades were priced out. So we moved from one kitchen to another until we ended up in the Westchester area. And then we created this nonprofit called Grassroots Neighbors, because as when you're a nonprofit, it's easier to access resources. But we're still operating in very much the same way. We're all volunteer. Nobody's doing it because they are getting a salary or a paycheck. And that's both good and bad, but the good part of it is that everything that we do, all the resources that we get, we can use them to help the people in our neighborhood. So when the COVID crisis started, we also added another program. So in addition to just providing warm meals and blankets and other supplies to people on the street, we also started helping people who are in their homes but needed help. So we deliver groceries every other week to one household. So every household in our program gets 2 deliveries per month. And then again, lots of people from the neighborhood here in the Westchester and Playa and surrounding area, they heard about it and they started pitching in. So quite honestly, our volunteer work doubled. during the pandemic. So about anywhere between 50 to 60 families are getting regular deliveries from us. And in addition to that, also we've also helped organically in other situations when people were being on the verge of being evicted. We fundraised. We also fundraised in situations when there were deaths in the family. So basically, we want to be there and help people in the best way that we can.
Thank you. That's great. Now, I would like to give David an opportunity to also introduce himself to our audience in case anyone needs a reminder. So please, David, go ahead.
Well, hi. First of all, I'd like to say hi to Tudor. What an unsung hero of Los Angeles. He's being very modest. First of all, Tudor and I, we go back a bit. I think we first met in Occupy Venice when I was sleeping on the sidewalk there. And Tudor and his group basically fed me up for most of the last 5 years, every Sunday, some really great, warm, fresh, hot cooked food. And Tudor, you always amaze me, you and your wife, Stephanie. I mean, you carry on a very high pressure job. You're raising a baby, and you're doing all of this great community work. I really, really admire. And you have a great political history coming from Europe and having seen so much of the failed neoliberal policies there. But it's great to see people like Tudor and people like so many people in mutual aid societies like Carlos and others with great political, and yourself, Margot, with great political insight, great education, but recognizing that going out and helping your neighbors and helping people person to person is so important. So super honored to be here. And I'm glad we're talking about Venice today. Venice was the very first place I ever lived in when I moved to Los Angeles 20 years ago. My own background is I was a bus mechanic for many, many years. I'm a working person. I became homeless back in 1994 and have been involved in so many actions on behalf of the people that everything rolls down on. The unhoused. We get blamed for everything. We're the targets of unparalleled hatred in Los Angeles. The worst thing about it, I mean, there are worst examples, I think, of persecution in Los Angeles, Black Lives, for instance. But unacknowledged, the amount of unacknowledged hatred and casual hatred that's tolerated among progressives towards the homeless community. So I'm really looking forward to us talking about that tonight. I'm talking to you today from Echo Park, and we could say, I'll just wrap it up by saying, if we want to see how bad things could be in Venice if we don't carry forward with conversations like today, look at the fences around Echo Park. It's a very sanitized, mall-looking park. It doesn't look like a community park anymore. It looks like some sanitized version, some movie set. And you can see that they have fenced out the community. They fenced it. Behind me, you'll see the fence, and you'll see a bunch of awnings. Those are the street vendors that have now been evicted from Echo Park. They're not allowed in here anymore. That's the community of Echo Park. These are the people that work the hardest in Venice, the Latino community. They do some of the dirtiest work. They come here to be a part of this country, and now they're being fenced out of Echo Park. So glad we're going to be talking about that today and how it relates to them.
And thank you for showing us a little bit of what Echo Park looks like right now. I don't think I've ever seen it like that in my lifetime, and I'm a native of Los Angeles. My mother grew up around Echo Park, and based off her stories, I don't think it's ever been like this before. So this is very, very unfortunate. Carlos, we have not heard from you.
It's inhumane.
Yes, I agree.
Right.
Carlos.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Glad to be here and glad to have my friends join us today. Of course, Tudor, we go way back during the days of Occupy. when we're fighting against foreclosures. And there's a lot that I can tell you about the man, but his heart is in the right place. He's motivated by love, and he's got an incredible amount of compassion towards people. I think that just having that kind of heart tells you everything that you need to know about Tudor. But definitely, thank you, brother, for joining us today. I know that you're taking time from your Sunday, from your family, but this is a very important topic that we're going to be discussing today. Same for David. Thank you, David, for always making yourself available to us so that we can talk to the people from the ground up, because a lot of the stuff that happened this weekend over in Venice, rather this week in Venice, is concerning for many different levels. To backtrack a little bit of what has happened is we have right now the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department Sheriff Villanueva, that he had made certain announcements. They certainly held a press conference and made known his intentions that he will be moving in on those people that are living at the beach in Venice. But for us to understand a little bit more on that, I'd like to bring one of you guys so that you guys can tell us a little bit of what has happened and where we are right now. But we also need to know a little bit, how do we even got here to this moment? And any of you guys want to take on from here?
Do you want to go first, David?
No, well, I was there for the Buscaino press conference on Monday, and talking with Peggy Kennedy, who's one of the heroes of Venice. But I don't know, and then we've heard all of these crazy announcements and this horrible example of everything that could go wrong when Villanueva took a homeless man in a wheelchair to the VA office and basically just dumped him on the sidewalk as a stunt. But I don't know, Tudor, have you been following a lot of this closely? I know you look at a lot of things that go on the apps like Citizen and things like that. Do you want to talk about that, or what do you think?
Sure. Yeah, okay. Yes, I'm happy to talk about it and also go back a little bit further. So the crisis that we have right now is one of basically failure, right? It's a failed system, and very deep, big problems are at play here. Housing is unaffordable. That's the bottom line. That's why people. That is the number one reason why people are out there on the street. Unaffordable. The rent is skyrocketing. Gentrification is exacerbating things. So basically, housing prices and the HUD has
and neither Buscaino or Villanueva said a word about that.
Exactly.
Talk about politicians avoiding the issues and just grandstanding. But forgive me for interrupting. I won't do it again, but I just had to put an amen to your point there. It's all about the big issue that they're really avoiding affordable housing, especially in the coastal areas.
That's a great point, David. Absolutely. And also, federal government is part of this too. HUD has been defunded by 70%. So public housing has basically been stagnating and is almost non-existent. It's a dying dinosaur as well, literally, because these are old buildings. So that's the root of the problem. That's why people are out there on the street in the first place. Now, as you can imagine, how do you fix such a humongous problem? Everybody has to be involved, right? State money has to come in. We've been trying to pass rent control, for instance, which is a very modest thing. Even that has been opposed by developers and moneyed interests. Anytime we try to do something in the area, whether it's temporary or permanent, housing first solutions, they get blocked. They get blocked by the same people who are saying we want people off the streets are the same people who are blocking any kind of the solutions that would make this crisis less.
Yeah,
so
I'd like to interrupt a little bit in there because and I don't want to lose my train of thought, because this is a very, very important area that you're touching right now, because there's a lot being blamed out there on different individuals. But the bottom line is here, what you are saying, can you repeat that again? Who is the people that are opposing the people, any kind of change regarding housing? Who are they?
Well, you can see some of their faces. They were standing behind the Buscaino at the press conference. They were holding signs. If you want me to name names, Mark Ryvet was one of the recognizable faces there.
Venice Stakeholders Association. Let's name
Okay.
some names.
So
There
it's
you go.
developers and housing associations, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So the people who basically want to turn Venice into Santa Monica or Manhattan Beach, right? So those are the people who have been opposing any of the solutions that are in place, and that extends further. It goes down into my area, into Playa del Rey and Westchester. It's basic, and honestly, I see this also as a right wing effort as well, because it's the same people. You'll see them wearing MAGA hats and making statements of that nature. So it's basically yeah. So those are the very it's those interests that stand to benefit from it, or those who are uneducated about the issue, and they think that, hey, push them out and the problem's gone. But that doesn't solve the problem.
Around how many unhoused people you say are living out there at the boardwalk?
So yeah, so together with Venice Community Housing, Venice Family Clinic, Venice Justice Alliance, we put out a statement about what's happening with the sheriff, and the number that we're using is somewhere 100+ people are at the beach, but the population around Venice is way more than that, and on the west side in general. But the 100 or so people basically are the ones at risk here.
Right. So again, to recap, for those people that don't really don't know what's going on in Venice, we have a situation out there where just like many other parts of the city of Los Angeles, we have encampments by the unhoused people, those experiencing homelessness. So it happens that it's over there by an area where it's frequented by tourists. And of course, this is painful for the city because it's taking money away from them. But it is also painful for the people that live out there, right? Because I'm trying to be real here. Nobody wants to see people living in front of their homes in tents, but we have allowed that to happen. As you stated, a broken system allow these things to happen to the point that it's out of control. So now comes in the sheriff. Again, he's up for re-election, and we need to understand what the situation with the sheriff is. He's been really from day one when he assumed post as a sheriff. He has made some very bad decisions that have been under attack consistently. So he desperately needs some political position to go these things, so things go away from him. So so what we have right now, we have a sheriff that is pretty much saying, I'm going to go and clean up the area over there. But the question that we have been asking is, well, what is his plan? You know what I mean? Just going in there and moving the people out of there, that's not a solution. You're just cleaning one area, but these people are going to go somewhere else. Yes, he's saying that he's giving them or providing shelter, but that's temporary. That goes back to the stuff that happened over there in Echo Park, David. It's pretty much the same.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, Margot.
Oh yeah, sorry. I just wanted to chime in before we go too deep on the Sheriff Alex Villanueva, because Tudor touched on how there's a housing crisis, and then my laptop was having problems, so I couldn't chime in. But this is I always like to bring in the national thing, and this is a national issue. It's not just in California, and it's part of this whole financial system that we live under. The same financial system that caused the financial collapse in 2008 is the same system we have now. Very little has been done. Very little is done under President Obama. President Biden now promised before he was elected that nothing would fundamentally change to the bankers, and that is exactly right. And so what we're seeing now is that regular, average, hardworking Americans are competing with these big companies, these big investors who can have no problem dropping up to 30% above the asking price, paying cash for a home, or buying entire blocks and then renting them out. So money is actually going into rental units instead of like building homes for people to buy. So now there's yet again another wealth transfer from the working class to the middle class, from Americans to the ultra wealthy, because now you don't even have the ability to put money into something that may appreciate in value, which has always been for the average American, a house. And so now you only have two options, right? You're either going to rent or you're going to end up on the street because you can't afford to buy a home. So that was the only point I wanted to make. And now let's get back to this horrible sheriff who not only has a problem with the unhoused, he also apparently, thinks that the pandemic isn't real.
Thanks for putting us on point, Margot. I mean, you hit it. It is about housing, and okay, so you're 25, you're 30. You're looking at, how do I pay my student loans? If I'm not disabled, that is a disability. If you can't pay your student loan, what good does it call it? They're devaluing education by not making it free. If you're looking at how you're going to save for a house or how you're going to find security in the system, and you're 25 or you're 30 or you're 35. Of course, we've got the other thing in terms of the context of all of this silly season, that really, I think what we're really discussing here today is the silly season that has erupted in Venice Beach. It's even more off the hook than Echo Park because of all of these looming catastrophes. Here at the end of this month, we're looking at everybody in Los Angeles is facing the end of their rent eviction moratoriums. And we're looking at perhaps 500,000 people facing eviction or foreclosure this summer. And the mayor wants a guy running for mayor and the sheriff want to come down there and put on a sideshow in Venice Beach. I think, Margot, you really, really hit the nail on the head on highlighting the real context of this. And so I would say the theme of the show today is really probably good Biden, bad Biden, and silly season erupts in Venice Beach, only it's not the street performers, it's politicians who are out doing the clowns on the Venice boardwalk this week. And it's not funny, though. It's really costing us our lives, and it's destroying this city. Very serious consequences about that we're facing. And I would say more, but I'll pass it on. Let some other folks bring up some points. That I've got a point I'd like to make a little bit later, especially about Buscaino and his interesting contrast between Santa Monica and Venice. But you guys go ahead.
I need to ask you a question, though, David, because you were in Echo Park. We saw the images, how the LAPD went in there and removed everybody by force. It was a nightmare that the entire city of Los Angeles had to be put through. They came in. I know the city councilman O'Farrell came in and saying, "Oh, we offering them housing. We're gonna put them in shelters. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that." Promised the world, made it look all pretty. Presented a pie to everybody. Say this is, we handling this. But we see that the results are different, and the numbers don't match to what they say. Because a lot of people that were put in shelters, let's understand, they were just temporary shelters. They're back on the street, most of the people. Am I correct?
Well, Carlos, you and I know a lot about the underlying numbers, and Margot, you probably do too. How about you, Tudor? The underlying numbers in terms of the number of unsheltered people, the number of shelter beds, versus the real solution, which is permanent homeless housing.
So in terms of the numbers about how many people are coming and leaving and so on, I think the best number that we can use here is the one from the LA County, from LASA, which says that on average, 127 people are exiting from being on the street. Sorry, the other way around. 207 are exiting from being on the street, and 227 are entering the street. So every day, on average, 20 more people are actually are ending up on the street than they're actually getting off the street. So this is and this is about a year old, and after COVID, I'm sure these numbers look worse.
Wow.
Yeah.
Could you repeat those numbers? You kind of broke up a little bit for the sake of our audience here. Let's repeat those numbers. Let's help everybody really understand why what's going on in Venice so dangerously and deathly absurd and absurdly and beyond silly.
Yeah. So I
those numbers again. Can you? Because you were breaking up there a bit.
Sure. So, and I want to be very clear. The numbers about the shelters here in Venice or the West Side or LA and so on, or whether it's transitional housing, they're very difficult to have accurate and up to the latest minute. But the county numbers are very clear. And to make it very simple, every day 20 more people are entering the street as opposed to getting off. So around about 200 are exiting the street, and about 220 are entering the street. So I think those are easy to remember.
Okay, so 20 more people are becoming homeless than there are even available shelter beds or placements in shelters. And what's even more horrifying than that, let's get to the reality that affects the 60% of the people of Los Angeles who are possibly facing homelessness. You end up on the street, not only is there the shortage of shelter beds, there's even a more dramatic, for every 100 or so people in a shelter, there's only maybe 5 or 6 actual slots available in permanent housing, either through Section 8 or some other program. For instance, right now in the LASA service area, they are managing in total, only 40,000 Section 8 placements for a Southern California population where 60% of the people can't afford their rent. And where, as you say, 220 or 120 or 200 or so people are becoming homeless every day. Your chance, if you become homeless, of getting a Section 8 voucher, say you worked a job at Amazon, or you worked a job at Jack in the Box, or you worked a job for Google, and you get laid off and you find yourself homeless, your chance of finding affordable housing in Los Angeles, you are one of 100 to 200 people looking to get that affordable housing slot. That's the catastrophe. That's the underlying bottom line, what you end up with when you don't have affordable housing as the number one crisis in Los Angeles. And you continue to say somebody sleeping on a tent on the beach is the biggest crisis in Los Angeles. No, it's not. It's the people who can't afford rent and housing in Los Angeles. And for Buscaino to come out today, or this last week, and Villanueva saying this is unacceptable, that we've got a few thousand people on the streets of Los Angeles when we've got hundreds of millions, we've got actually tens of millions of people in this Southern California who are on the verge of becoming homeless. That is like pointing at a little leak on an upper deck of the Titanic when the whole bottom of the boat has been blown off. That's what they're not addressing. And that's what we need. We need leaders in this city who are going to address the housing affordability crisis, the college affordability crisis for a whole generation of folks. These are old folks that are not talking about what really impacts the working people and the young people of this country that are being challenged. They're being said, why should I buy into liberal solutions? Why should I buy into progressive solutions when they're not even addressing these issues, and they're being tempted by the hate and polarization of conservatives like Buscaino and Villanueva?
Yeah, absolutely, and this is what I think it's important to also put Villanueva in a more of a political context, because the two institutions have called for his resignation. The California Democratic Party, number one, and the Oversight Board at the county have both demanded that he resign. So this is him pivoting to the right, even though he was elected from the left. Right? He made friends with progressive groups and immigrant rights groups, and said that he would do something different, but he hasn't. So this is him trying to save his political career, and our neighborhoods and the poorest people in our city are basically pawns on his political chessboard. It's a terrible thing. Cruel. It's very cruel.
You
On
hit
an on a bigger level than even Villaraigosa shifted to the right when he followed the same trajectory. First took progressive backing and then shifted far to the right. But Villanueva, as you say, have done it even more egregiously and actually even criminally.
Yeah, it is very clear. It's very important for us to note these things, because what we saw this past week with the press conferences and them walking through the boardwalk, it's just a show. It's a pony show. That's all it was. Because the fact of the matter is that Villanueva doesn't have a plan. He's coming out there with a fist. He's pretty much saying, we're going to give you a few days. We're going to talk to you. We're going to offer you housing. And if you don't, we're going to move in. This is not acceptable. Well, it has not been acceptable for years. I'm glad that he...
Well, listen very closely, Carlos. Listen very closely to actually what he said. He said, I'm going to get you into shelters. He wasn't offering housing because he's not that's the big thing in terms of homelessness right now, that these demagogues like Villanueva and Buscaino are coming out and they're telling the public, get them into shelters, get them into shelters. They're going to be back out on the street in 6 months. And we're spending now over $1 billion on shelters that have no permanent housing placement behind them. So, they're grandstanding, like you say, Carlos.
Yeah. So, look, I have no doubt that they're going to use force, because this is the only way they operate. This is the only way they can do things. There's always, like I always have say, there's the right way of doing things and there's the wrong way of doing things. The way they're taking it right now, is the wrong way. Because, yes, we understand that there are crimes that are happening. We understand that it's not a pleasant sight to see a lot of tents out there in that part of the city. But crimes are happening everywhere, all over the city. And we have tents everywhere. Moving those people out of there is just a temporary thing, because they will be back on the streets. Those shelters are not working. It's been proven that the unhoused community don't want to be in these shelters for many different reasons. Some do go through there, some do stay, but the vast majority are walking away from there for some very important reasons. Now, we have to make sure that we explain these things, because again, this is a political grandstand by both of them. Buscaino running for mayor, what a coincidence. He found something that he can get some media attention, because he's a failure. He was a failure as a councilman. He's got issues in his district, so he's been part of the problem. We see gentrification taking place everywhere. We have seen how they have literally served, including Vizcaino, they have served the developers here in Los Angeles, and that is why we have so many people on it.
Yeah, Carlos,
And go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead, Margot.
So, okay, thank you. So, you touched on a couple of things. One thing I want to say is that the LA Sheriff's Department, first of all, the LA Sheriff's is one of the most corrupt organizations in this state. Lee Baca, other people have gone to prison for the actions, and I'm not convinced that just putting a couple of people in jail from the Sheriff's Department has fixed anything. Apparently, this guy Alex Villanueva is just another corrupt person within a corrupt institution, which is the LA Sheriff's. So the state, the city, the county, they need to do something about this entire institution, because it's not working on behalf of the people of LA County. It's not working on behalf of the people of Los Angeles. All they're doing is terrorizing people. All they're doing is brutalizing people in prisons. This is an institutional problem that is going on. And there was one other point, and I completely just missed it. But that was one that I wanted to point out about the sheriff's department for anyone who is not from this area, to understand that this is an extremely corrupt department that has not been properly dealt with. But okay, please go ahead.
And speaking of this department, we have been making calls to the county, right, to the county board of supervisors, and the answers that we're getting back is that we really can't stop him. This is within his legal authority to do what he's doing, and that's outrageous. How can you have such a it's like a military without accountability, without a boss, right? Without accountability, because he must be reined in, and there's nothing institutional that can stop him, right? So
well, Tudor, I've been making some calls too, and I don't know if you've heard about this, but there is something that we can do. First of all, the sheriff does not run the county. The county is not run by a police force. This is not supposed to be a police state, at least on paper. The people in charge of setting county policy and county enforcement policy is actually the county board of supervisors. One thing that should be done, and everybody watching this show should call the county board of supervisors and demand that they refer Villanueva's rogue actions to the county council. It's a violation of the California state constitution and according to our U.S. Supreme Court, the U.S. Constitution, to not offer people an adequate alternative. So Villanueva can go out there to Venice, especially the Sandy area. If he doesn't, the sheriffs don't have jurisdiction over the boardwalk proper. But we should be urging the county board of supervisors to turn this over to the county council and have a county council make it very plain to Villanueva that he's stepping outside of county authority and he can be fired for this. That's my own thinking. And this is what I'm hearing is that one of the best chances we have of stopping this push by Villanueva, his deadline is July 4th. He wants to try to come down there with these massive sweeps in Venice, which will dramatically change the entire nature. You're not just chasing out homeless people. It'll be poor kids on color on skateboards. It'll be people that don't look like they're they're customers for the Gap or for J. Crew. Those are the people, not just the homeless, that they're going to be sanitizing Venice Beach from, the people that make Venice a diverse place. But your thoughts, again, I'm sorry I interrupted a bit, but I wanted to toss that to you, Tudor, and tell us more about what you're hearing about the county, the efforts on the county level.
So yeah, you're absolutely okay. The county has a role, but the county can't fire him, right? You can't just take him out of office. Like for example, I don't know, like a mayor can fire somebody who's the head of a certain department of the city. Of course, with just cause. And in this case, nobody can fire Villanueva, but he can be recalled. Villanueva can see the pressure on him that, hey, your re-election really is not going to happen. And that's part of the reason why we launched the petition. We're encouraging people in the city and the entire county to sign it so that he can see the numbers that, no, your re-election is not going to happen because of this. And the other thing is, I think it is important for us to continue to be on the ground, to do the necessary citizen reporting, to identify civil rights violations, which then can also be taken to court. So we have to basically push at every level because he is basically making it harder for the solutions and the help to people who need it to be effective.
Now, let's be clear, because he's coming over there as if he's a hero. He's saying politicians have failed you. It almost sounds like when I'm hearing him, I'm hearing Trump. Politicians have failed you. I'm here to save you. I'm going to clean Venice Beach, and I'm going to get rid of the tents. I'm going to do all those things. They have not been able to do it. The city councilman has not been able to do it. That's pretty much what he's saying. Obviously, that plays into a lot of the people that are unhoused people. The people that just don't care about the unhoused people. They only care about their property, their value of their property. They only care about, being able to not see poverty. As long as it's in somebody else's neighborhood, they don't care. These are the NIMBYs. So he's playing to those people. So it's very important for us to say that and to clear that, because after this show is over, and if he does succeed in clearing the area from people living in tents out there, those people are just gonna go to somebody else's neighborhood. They're just pushing the unhoused people from one community to the other. The unhoused community has been suffering for a long time. They're hurting. And actions like this hurt them even more. This is why it's so wrong, because he's just doing this as a show to save his political future.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and the fact is that there are a few service providers in Venice, and pushing people away from there makes it even harder. I mean, just last Sunday, a woman told me, "Yeah, I tried to go somewhere else, and I was starving. I lost weight, so I came back." So is that what we've come down to? We are starving people to get reelected? How much? What is it?
Is there a website or an email? What's the website that people should go to sign the petition that you're circulating, Tudor?
So the petition has been posted on Indivisible Los Angeles on the Facebook page. It's been tweeted from Indivisible California 43. Ground Game LA has tweeted this as well on Twitter. But I think the easiest place is Indivisible LA, the Facebook page.
What's the title of the petition?
It's Stop Sheriff Villanueva from displacing unhoused people on the west side. Because people
are the sheriff's department is full of, there are gangs, there are white supremacist gangs that are terrorizing people all over the county in the sheriff's department. That's not being addressed. We know that the sheriff's department targets youth of color, even under a man like Villanueva. And this again is what he's feeding into down on the Venice boardwalk. The efforts to gentrify and sanitize an area is going to hit on poor youth, people of color, dramatically on the boardwalk. It's only going to serve a racist gentrification process down there. That's who he's really serving. He's not serving anybody, even of his own race, color, or background.
And to be clear again, what they are offering the unhoused, they don't care about them. If they actually care, they would have been doing something throughout the pandemic. The unhoused community was left out there in the streets to die, knowing that we needed to have shelter in place. They were living on the street. Where was Villanueva at? Where were they at? Where was Buscaino? Now that they're running for office, now the re-election time comes in, now they want to play hero. We see right through you. We see right through them. And it is important for us to understand that the only thing that's going to happen here is continuing to push the problem to other neighborhoods. That's what happened when we had back 10 years ago, when the homeless population was only known to exist, or mainly only exist, the vast majority in Skid Row. They came to gentrify the area. They pushed everybody out. And now we had the unhoused community living all over Los Angeles. this is exactly what they do. They're just pushing these people to someone else's district, to someone else's neighborhood. That's what O'Farrell did. He cleaned out over there. A lot of the people went to Venice. A lot of the people went to South Central. You know, they're gonna go to somebody else's community, and the people that are calling for this encampment to be removed are the people that don't care about what happens to them and don't care about anybody else's neighborhood. They only care about theirs. That's it. Their benefit only.
They're talking about pushing people to Canoga Park. They're talking about pushing people to Sun Valley. And, these are people that grew up for generations in the Oakwood neighborhood of Venice, or grew up for generations. 75% of the people who are homeless in Los Angeles actually have lived here for 10 years or more. One of the big problems that we've had in Venice is all of these homeless sweeps, like the ones that Buscaino and Villanueva are pushing for, actually push out the long-time homeless, and they leave space for the newly arrived homeless. When people come down to Venice Beach and they say, oh, these people aren't even from California, the reason that has happened is that we've already had too many homeless sweeps in Venice. Like you say, Carlos, it's just about pushing. It's about the rich in Los Angeles targeting an area for hyper-gentrification, pushing them into the poor, pushing the poorest and most marginalized, whether you're homeless, a street vendor, black or brown, and pushing you further away from the community that your family helped create and raise you in. And, one thing, we should note, I think a recall effort on the sheriff would be excellent. The sheriffs are the ones that do what? One of their biggest jobs is to enforce eviction. It's the sheriff's department. What if we had a sheriff? Somebody should be running for sheriff in this city saying, until you get rents in line, this summer, I am not going to support evicting people from their apartments. I'm not going to send sheriffs out to evict people because it's not a sheriff's problem. It's a political failure. And people have to understand what we need in Los Angeles is that our leaders who are not going to criminalize poverty, but they're going to address its systemic causes. And the number one systemic cause in Los Angeles is the lack of, as you mentioned it early on, Tudor, in this conversation, the lack and the destruction of public housing in Los Angeles.
Now, I'd like to say something about, I know that I'm treading right now on eggshells, but I'm going to say, look, it hasn't been easy for Councilman Bonning, because we had a major crisis. A lot of the people that are moving out there to the beach, to live on the streets out there, you got a lot of people from out of state as well. You have people just coming from everywhere. So the problem was not just, it's not only Bonnings, it's the entire city of Los Angeles. The entire city council has failed the unhoused community. So we cannot just blame one person. I know that's his district. I'm not trying to defend him, but I gotta say that he has held back from criminalizing a lot of the unhoused population. I gotta give him that, because he has shown a little bit more, restraint when it comes to this, even though that a lot of the residents out there are pushing for him to be aggressive. It's a delicate thing, and we got to remember that the unhoused community didn't choose to be unhoused. This is an entire system that has failed and has created homelessness in the levels that we know.
Yeah,
I've criticized Mike a lot on a lot of issues, but I would have to agree with you, Carlos. I want to give him kudos.
I just something, because I have not been able to come in for a while, and I am the co-host, so I think that I deserve a little airtime. Thank you. Just a quick moment, and I'll throw it back to you guys. And it's been a great discussion. But one thing that I wanted to point out, and I wanted to counter a little bit of this narrative about maybe like some of the these unhoused people, or they're coming from, outside of Los Angeles, outside the state. But I also want to remind people that so do gentrifiers. Gentrifiers don't come from Los Angeles most of the time. Like, rich people come here, they can afford it. It's a nice place to live. And what do they push out the people who have been here for generations, right? You see this happening in parts like in Boyle Heights, where there's this strong push to gentrify this vibrant community that has been here, this Mexican, Latin community that has been in Boyle Heights for generations. The housing prices are going up. And a lot of, white people want to move in who have money, who are not from Boyle Heights, right? So we have to remember that, these are just arguments to make it seem like these unhoused people don't deserve to be where they are. But where are they going to go? They have to go somewhere. It doesn't matter if they're not born in LA or they didn't grow up in LA. Unhoused people are pushed and bussed around from state to state, from region to region. Nobody wants them. They're somebody else's mess, but they are not somebody else's mess. They're our mess. They're our community. And we all have to recognize that, or else, we're always going to have people living on the streets. And that just, I said, I grew up here, and I've always seen Skid Row as just like my lesson in inequality, because it's one of the first things I remember going to downtown LA with my grandmother and my mother, and just seeing tents and seeing homeless people and house people living on the street. I understand that. So for me, this is something that is so important that we have to address, and there's no reason to address it. We have the funds to address this. The state of California has a surplus. We came out of a pandemic with a surplus. Like, what the hell are we doing with a surplus in a pandemic? And this is an aside, but we're not. That, the state having a surplus, that money should be going to housing people. End of story. And this, and I think Carlos's point about the councilman Mike Bonin is fair. I mean, he was also quoted as saying, what the sheriff is doing is crazy, right? That's counterproductive. Okay, we'll give them a little credit. That's fine. But I don't see the city council doing enough for the unhoused. It's not, people just started and living on the streets yesterday. Like, I'm in my 30s, and I've seen people living on Skid Row my entire life. So, this is an issue that is ongoing, that the city just chooses to ignore. And when something fancy comes into town, like the Democratic National Convention or the Olympics or whatever, they clean the streets, and they push all the unhoused people out of LA and somewhere else, which is just, it's such a crime against humanity. It just makes me so angry. And it's one of the things that I really hate about this city. I love LA, but I hate how nobody in power seems to care about the most vulnerable, the most ignored people. It just makes me want to cry, because I see it all the time. I just get really upset. So. I didn't expect to get this emotional, but I live. This is my home, and it just makes me so angry. But I just wanted to throw those 2 cents out.
That's a great point, Margot, but even so, the numbers don't corroborate the story. 2/3 of the people who are on the street are from Los Angeles. 80% of the people who are on the street have lived in LA for 5 years or more. Okay, so it's easy to get tricked into these individual shiny, or these individual examples. Oh, I heard this guy's from Florida, or this guy's from Phoenix, or whatever, but that's not the reality, And then that's part of the tragedy, is that myths are being picked up by the media, by editors who don't care. And even the story about the woman with a knife at Buscaino's press conference. When you are if what divides you from the rest of the world is a thin fabric, right? And if your kitchen is inside of this thin fabric, right, you will have a knife, right? And she was not out there to harm anybody. She was simply walking by, and it dropped from her pocket. Okay, and that's why she was released that same day. So but that, of course, has been hyped up as, oh my goodness, what a dangerous person tried to attack Buscaino. But that is nothing. That's not true. and that's yet another myth that's being perpetrated, as being repeated and used to harm people who are hurting and really just need a little bit of help. And not just a little bit of help, the systemic changes to need to happen as well.
Absolutely.
And I think we're running close to the end of the hour.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say that, Tudor. So, Carlos, David, Tudor, I think we should go ahead and say any final thoughts on this topic. I know we could absolutely talk on this for hours and so much to discuss. So, David, I'll let you start. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to say before we sign?
Final thought, go to Invisible People and sign the recall petition on Villanueva. And just recognize this week was a master example of the horrifying silliness that our media is letting grandstanders like Villanueva and Buscaino get away with. And lastly, that Mike Bonin actually did some very good things out there. To address the fires and the violence, he's brought help teams out to address both issues on the boardwalk. While these guys were out there making silly season comments, I will, although I've been critical of Bonin in the past, I will give him credit that he's actually behind the scenes. He's doing things pretty well to kind of damp down the craziness from our politicians in Venice.
Sure, I'll go next. Final thoughts on this is I don't want to make this a referendum or a discussion about individuals. I think this is a call to action for everyone in LA to stand up, to speak out against this injustice, and to do the work. Join groups, organize, push harder, make calls. Really, we are the solution to our problems. So let's work on that.
Thank you, Tudor. Thank you for being with us. This is just another time in our city politics and the issues that we care about. The unhoused community has been suffering for a long time. Whatever happens at Venice is not going to stop. They're not going to resolve the problem. It's just, again, an area that is being used to position themselves rather than position the unhoused community in a better situation. So we have to continue to pay attention. We have to hold them accountable. Yes, this is, you're absolutely correct, Tudor. This is more than one or two persons there trying to steal the show. This is about the people that are sleeping on the streets. This is about the people that are hurting right now. And again, I hope to see a real plan coming from any of them. If they, now that they decided to wake up and realize that there is a crisis. So I hope that they come out with a real plan, not just talking points.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, David. Thank you, Tudor, for joining us today. It's been a really fantastic discussion, and it's been so nice to have both of you on with us to share your very, very important perspectives on the subject. And I hope that Sheriff Alex Villanueva gets his at some point. I know he's under investigation by the Department of Justice, and so is the LA County Sheriffs in general. So I'm hoping that they get theirs. They're just deserved soon enough. So I guess we're out of time. I was going to show a funny clip of Jeff Goldblum, but I think I'll save it for next time, unless you have moments to have a few chuckles. You do?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me add this. Okay. So everybody knows Jurassic Park, and Jeff Goldblum was the eccentric mathematician. And he has this charismatic laugh. So I found this remix this morning, and I thought it'd be fun to share. I won't share the whole thing because it's 3 minutes.
Dig up dinosaurs?
Just a few.
Oh.
Yo.
Yo. Yo. Yo. Yo. You'll have to get used to Malcolm.
So you two dig up dinosaurs?
Yeah, so that goes on for about 3 minutes, but I just thought, we'd end on a light note, a change, we talking some serious things here, but there's Jeff Goldblum to brighten our day. So let me sign off for everyone. On behalf of everyone, thank you to all our viewers for hanging the end of the show. You've been watching Stand Up Fight Back, where we discuss analysis and strategy for the progressive movement. I'm your host, Margot Paez, and over here, up here, that's Carlos Marroquin, amazing co-host, the wonderful grassroots organizer, and our special guests today were David Busch-Lilly and Tudor Popescu, where we discuss the things that are going on with the Unhoused community and the Sheriff Department's attempt to evict them from Venice Beach here in California. Tune in next week on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, where we'll have another set of amazing guests, and we'll talk about something else that is of importance to the progressive movement. So please remember to get vaccinated if you haven't already, and still wear that mask because we're not out of this pandemic yet. Okay, everyone, we'll see you soon, and stay safe. Have a wonderful